It's taken me 10 years to work out how to make the perfect pork scratching, or pork rind if you're American. Today, I'm going to share all my secrets with you. Hello, welcome to English Country Life on a bright, clear autumn day. My name's Hugh, and together with a fabulous Fiona, I run a small holding here in rural Lincolnshire. And at this time of year, in late autumn, we're making our bacon for the year. And actually, as part of that process, I de-rind the bacon. But you know the smallholders code, we don't waste anything. So what do we do with all that bacon rind? Well, we make pork scratchings. That's what they're called in the UK. I think pork rind, the American term, is probably a better term. Honestly, there is quite a lot that's involved in it, and me and being a bit of a nerd, I've looked into the science behind it and why you need to follow certain steps. So join me in our adventure to make the perfect pork rind. Step one of our bacon making, or indeed our making of pork rinds, pork scratchings, whatever you want to call them, is to get the rind off the meat. Now I'm using here pork loins. This is actually only half of a pork loin, but I cut them to this size to get them in the fridge. And to get the rind, which is the skin, off of this joint of meat, I'm using a razor sharp, semi-flexible boning knife, and I want to take just the skin, leaving the fat behind on the bacon, because fat is flavour. And once I've got it off, I will inevitably have some thin pieces of fat still adhering to that rind, and I'm going to trim those away. We can render those down into lard, and we've got a video on how to make your own lard. It's fantastic fat for cooking, for pastry, or even for making soap. But all we want is the rind. Right, this is one of the big tips that I've promised you. Before we do anything else with our rinds, we need to boil them in heavily salted water, and I will explain why we're doing that. But the first thing is, get yourself some water on the boil and put loads of salt in it. There's no specific measurement for this, but as much as you think it will take. Put the pan back on the heat, give it a good stir, and get all of the salt to dissolve in that water. Next, cut up your rinds, and you're going to need something strong to do this. I'm actually using paramedic shears here, but you can use very sharp kitchen scissors or a very sharp knife. Bear in mind that what we've got here with the rind is basically uncured leather. It's incredibly strong and it's incredibly resilient, and that's actually what we're trying to fix. So once you've cut it up into chunks, drop it into that heavily salted water. Keep the heat on, because the cool rinds will obviously lower the temperature of the water. And then what we're going to do is keep it on the boil for 2 hours. And the reason that we do that is that what makes that rind strong and leathery and resilient is collagen. That's what creates a very tough skin, and by boiling it in salting water for 2 hours, we're removing the collagen. And honestly, I'll show you in a minute, but that 2-hour boil in salt that removes the collagen totally changes the nature of these pork rinds. They go into it incredibly leathery, incredibly strong, incredibly resilient, and they come out incredibly soft. I'll show you that in just a sec. I've let my pork rinds cool down for a bit, and I want to just show you what they're like. Now, can you see that they're just soft, almost jelly-like? I can pull them apart, and that's the difference that the boiling in salt makes. The next stage, and it will become clear, is I've got to get almost all of the water out of these pork rinds, and obviously boiling in salt water, we've put a lot in. Now, the way I'm choosing to do that is I'm laying them out on trays, and I'm going to put them in our dehydrator overnight, and I'm going to dry them for around about 12 hours, 68 centigrade, 155 Fahrenheit. And once I do that, I'm not trying to cook them, I'm just trying to get that water out. If you haven't got a dehydrator, a very low oven, something like that, for around 12 hours will dry them right out. Listen to this. That's how dry we want them. The reason we want them that dry is we're going to deep fry them. And to deep fry them, you want to put a single layer of your dried out pork rinds in the basket of your deep fat fryer. You could do this in an oven, But I think deep frying works the best. You want to get it hot. You want it up there about 200 centigrade, as hot as it will go. And then you pop them in the oil. Hold your nerve for about 20 seconds, and there are still tiny amounts of moisture inside those rinds. And what's going to happen is that is going to boil inside and puff the rinds up. Look at those bubbles on the right hand side, and here we go. You suddenly start to see those rinds expanding, they're puffing up, it's kind of like popcorn. They are blowing up with that tiny amount of internal moisture, and that's why we've got to get moisture down before we do this. And they become light and they become airy, and then all you need to do is continue to cook them, and obviously because they're now floating, turn them around occasionally. 3 minutes is all it's going to take in the hot oil, and I find that a more reliable cooking method than trying to do it in an oven at the same sort of temperature. Once those pork rinds have gone golden brown, around about the 3 minute mark, drain them onto some kitchen paper and then season immediately. And the reason for that is any fat that's remaining in the pork rinds is still liquid, and that'll stick the seasoning to the pork rinds. If you do it cold, the seasoning just falls off again. I did one batch with plain salt, but this is an alternative that I really like. That's onion powder, homemade, it's going in, followed by just a little bit of homemade garlic. Then some sweet paprika, and that gives it that barbecue tang, and a little bit of hot chili powder. Some salt, because it always needs just a little bit of salt, but you don't have to go too heavy here. Then give the whole thing a stir, and we'll sprinkle it on hot rinds. When you're using a home mix like this, my top tip here is to put it on with a sieve or something like that, even a little tea strainer, and give it a light shake and a sprinkle to evenly distribute it. Toss the rinds around in it, and then make sure you do the other side. Once you've allowed your pork rinds to cool, you've got to store them. We vacuum pack ours, but don't pull too hard a vacuum or you can crush them. They'll store equally well in a Tupperware box or in a freezer bag, and you absolutely can freeze them, although they'll keep in the fridge for about a week if you can keep your hands off them. So that is our pork scratchings, or our pork rinds, packed up, vacuum sealed, ready to be posted off to some of our great friends who help us on the smallholding. It is lovely to be able to say thank you with some of the things that we make. If you've enjoyed today's video, can you spare us 5 seconds? Give us a thumbs up down below. If there's anything you want to know about our self-sufficient life, please ask us in the comments. I've made this video because someone asked me, what do you do with all that pork rind when you de-rind for making bacon? Well, now you know. And if you'd like to see those videos and everything else we make on our self-sufficient life, just tap on subscribe down there, hit the bell next to it. It's a completely free service, but you get told every time we upload a new video. For today, thanks for joining us. Come back and see us soon. Take care.